And we are live for the Friday DFS Q&A. We have Pat Kerrane coming hot off of the walkthrough. Does that drop on Thursdays, I believe, or Wednesdays?
Depends when you consider the day change. I get it overnight on Thursday night. So when you wake up Friday, you can read the walkthrough.
When you wake up Friday, you can read the walkthrough. When you're done reading the walkthrough, I will have my DFS article out, which comes out whenever I get done with it, essentially. And that is usually Thursday or Friday afternoons. I got that done and published a few hours ago. So I feel like with those two, we have a pretty strong grasp of the slate. Myself from the game theory ownership side, and yourself from understanding more of the minutia of the matchups. And essentially that is like the projections, right? That's what would be sort of the corollary of this in DFS, is that you could probably do the projections quite well if you care to devote the time to it. It sounds nauseating. I would never want to do that. So don't blame you for just, here's the walkthrough, take care of it yourself.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I agree. You could kind of do projections with all the information that I'm pulling here, but instead I'm sort of I'm just writing it out. Like, here's how I think this game could go. And, some interesting notes and nuggets about the usage here. And then I think, you can kind of potentially use that as you're a little bit more informed about, like, not just games that might shoot out or might go under, but also like why people are kind of thinking about them the way they're thinking about them. Maybe you disagree with something that I've said, which I think can be just as helpful sometimes as agreeing with what I put in there. So yeah. And of course, I think all of the ownership, game theory, all of that stuff is absolutely crucial. I'm a little bit further behind you on that, but I for those that don't know, I also play DFS myself, do mostly small field tournaments on DraftKings. And so I tend to go like somewhat contrarian, but also, you can eat some chalk there as well, just as long as you kind of go with some like contrarian correlation stuff is kind of one of my favorite tricks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kick it off right into quarterback. So this slate is not what I would call it's not good in an entertainment value sense, right? We are missing. We already had play the first and second, I believe, highest team total teams, or maybe it was first and fourth, but we are missing teams 1, 2, 4, and 6 by team total on the main slate, and the main slate will be one game shorter than last week and every week up until the bye, because we somehow have a double header on Monday. That's normal and just makes absolute sense. So it's a slightly shorter slate than last week with way fewer fun scoring teams on it. So I think that's not as entertaining, but honestly, those are the good slates. Last slate was brutal because if you didn't have, the nuts in the first wave of 1 p.m. games, I think you should have been swapping off of all the good plays, and then that killed you. Like, I think it was a really tough day for good tournament players to win. And I don't say that as myself thinking of myself as a good tournament player. I saw other good tournament players struggle because I think it was very difficult to just, jam chalk early, jam chalk late, and think you had a good shot at playing well. So I got dusted off. I feel like this slate is the ideal slate for tournament players because tournament players love low-scoring, ugly slates because weird stuff happens on those slates, and we benefit when weird stuff happens. The weirdest thing right now is that the highest or some of the highest team total teams are the Rams and Raiders, both coming off of disappointing weeks. And we've seen, especially in the past few years, team total is a really strong corollary to quarterback ownership. So that means Derek Carr and Stafford, I think, are going to be two of what will be the top 3 to 5 most owned quarterbacks. And really, it wouldn't shock me if they come in at 1-2. The Raiders play the Cardinals, who just got absolutely dusted off by the Chiefs. Wasn't a particularly competitive game. And obviously, the Chiefs are good. We saw they're not infallible. There's probably still not peak Chiefs yet, and they still managed to just completely crush the Cardinals, who have, I think, one of the worst defenses in the league, and the Rams versus the Falcons, which another one where the defense, I don't know if they're better or worse than the Cardinals, frankly, but it's just not a good team overall. We expect the Stafford and the Rams to just have the ball constantly, get to run a lot of plays. I guess I know you kind of pointed out that it's very possible we see more of a balanced approach from the Rams, which would not be nearly as exciting for like Stafford and DFS if they're up 17 going into the second half, and then it's like the Darrell Henderson show. Any takes on like how you would approach Stafford this week?
Yeah, I mean, if he's chalky, I would just avoid him. I think that, the Rams have made it very clear that they don't want to be like a super pass heavy team. We've seen Stafford have big weeks with the Rams, but they have been trending towards. I've been trending towards like kind of they've been flirting with like maybe we should be a run first team, but they're they were kind of pass heavy to start the year. They trended towards being like a pass first but balanced team. I think this matchup sets them up very well to kind of have a efficient passing game rolling through Cooper Kupp, but then probably riding a lot of Darrell Henderson. So I think Henderson's interesting. I know he's going to be chalky as well, but that appeals to me a little bit more because he led the all running backs in snap share. He led all running backs in route share, which is not something that I mean, that really surprised me that Darrell Henderson led all running backs in route share last week. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to have the same type of role that Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley do, who are the guys right behind him. But, he's going to be out there and getting a lot of opportunities. At quarterback, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure Stafford has that high of a ceiling. And if I have to eat chalk to get there, I'm just not that interested in it.
Yeah, it's kind of how I felt when I was writing them up. I think there are, quarterback plays that give you the same type of profile, right? Not going to give you a lot of rushing work, very strong potential for 300 yards, 3 TDs, something like that. But I don't think that's like a unique profile to be chasing. Even though the slate is weak, there aren't a ton of quarterbacks that can give us that. Like, I think there are at least a few quarterbacks who at cheaper prices or just lower ownership have that in their range. Like Brady is probably not going to be particularly popular coming off of a very bland week one. I think it's maybe reasonable that their week one was bland because their receivers got banged up in the game, came into the game banged up even, and then the Cowboys showed no life. But like Brady is the same profile as Stafford, right? You're just banking on 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, hopefully 2 of them, or the 100-yard bonus on DraftKings goes to one player, right? And that's the guy you played with him. And that's kind of the same thing with Stafford. You get more certainty playing Kupp, but to me, the only way I'd even consider playing Stafford is like play him with Allen Robinson and Tyler Higbee, or even Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp. But I think just a single stack of Stafford and Kupp, the amount of chalk it has versus what the upside is, especially on the Stafford side of upside, is not great. Moving to the Cardinals game, which I think it's the highest total game, I believe, is the Arizona Las Vegas game. Defenses that aren't impressive with offenses that have playmakers. Arizona's offense looked both these offenses actually looked pretty struggle heavy in the opener. But I think versus these defenses, Vegas is going to tell you, and probably rightfully so, that it should be a lot of scoring. I transitioned to this game because one of our own, Craigers, as we kindly call him, please tell the people it is Dorch Sisson. Is it Dorch Sisson?
I think it is. I think it is. So when you talk about the quarterback conversation, I think one of the things that's driving like Carr, Stafford, Lance, it's just salary, right? You need to find salary here. Like this slate strikes me as one that it's like there's pretty good running back chalk. There's a super cheap defense that's going to be mega chalk that guys like you and me aren't going to want to play. So that means maybe we're spending up a little bit of defense. Yep. So it's like you're kind of, and then like there's not that many cheap wide receivers that I love. Like Elijah Moore is kind of interesting, but I'm not a fan of that game environment. Like you could do, I was like, do I really want to do like a mini with him and DPJ or him and Cooper? It just felt so gross. But it's like there's nothing like that feels great in terms of salary savings. It kind of feels okay. You throw in Dorch there, and if you want to go like Josh Jacobs with a Dorch little mini correlation or something, I don't hate it. And honestly, at the dummy lineup that I built, it has Dorch in the flex.
Yeah, Dorch, they did on FanDuel, he's 55, on DraftKings. Let me see what his price is.
He's 34 or some 35.
Yeah, for a team that like infamously loves targeting their slot, loves targeting these short A-dot guys on DraftKings that rewards, those type of players disproportionately, like a bad price. I get that he's Greg Dortch, but it's like going to be difficult to avoid this player.
The thing I would say about Dortch is I think if he gets a lot of volume, it's a symptom of a failed Cardinals offense. So like I wouldn't include him. I wouldn't be doing like Kyler Dortch stacks. I like this take. So I think there are similar things in season long where like I didn't want to pair Corey Davis with Zach Wilson because if Corey Davis is out there getting 7-8 targets a game, I was like, that means the Garrett Wilson bump or the Elijah Moore bump never applied to Zach Wilson. And this is like the same kind of take. I love that it's a symptom of a failed offense. It's a very good quote. Yeah, and so that's like where, Jacobs Dortch, I think, is a little interesting because it's like Raiders roll the Cardinals, and they have a bunch of come from behind, check down, prevent defense type stuff at the end, and Dortch gets there on volume, which, I mean, he doesn't even need that much volume at 3,500. So that's like the type of Dortch lineups that I'm thinking about, or frankly, just solo Dortch, because he's so cheap. I don't know. I don't tend to do this type of build though. I don't tend to do like a true punt, cheap wide receiver. What are your thoughts on that, like strategically? Because it definitely kind of hurts the ceiling case.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, especially with his profile. He's not cheap punt because we think he's going to get 6 deep shots or whatever. He's cheap punt because we think his band is pretty tight, like it's centered around like a 5 for 40 line, and receivers
Right.
where we get our volatility. So to me, yeah, I don't think he's quite X out level. The defense you were referring to, I assume, was the Bengals. They're 2,200 facing Cooper Rush. That's an X out team. I won't play them. You'll have 0 of them.
Play the Bengals.
Like if the Bengals score a touchdown, hold Cooper Rush to 3 sacks, interception, touchdown, 7 points. That's another slate I lose. Like that's just how it's going to be. I don't think Dortch is quite that level of X out, but I do think
I'm not seeing him being projected as all that chalky. So if he was chalky, I would be out. But I'm sort of looking for places that I can like save salary without eating chalk, and it seems like the field is like there's just not that many places to go. So the field seems to have found the other ones.
I think he'll be, especially on DraftKings. I doubt it on FanDuel. I think on DraftKings he'll be like, he could push for 10% plus, and that's not like crazy, right? It's not like the cheap punt running back that's 28%, 30%. That's just like when Alexander Madison comes in, he should be like 30%. But I'm not like to me. Maybe it's just a prior that I should shed of Greg Dortch being like a nobody. Because clearly the Cardinals don't think he's a nobody. But to me, when these like really suspect players come in to sort of all of a sudden roles, like I just instinctively want to not be playing them.
Right. No, I'm with you there. And I think of the fact that he's the slot guy. He's so clearly the slot guy. No one is challenging him for that role because Moore is going to be inactive. AJ Green is terrible. And so like, I think maybe the pivot, if you want to kind of actually play that game to be fun, is to try to play Marquise Brown. Because I think he's sort of the opposite of what I said about Dortch. If Marquise Brown goes off, he's adding a deep threat element to the offense. His plays are going to be hugely beneficial for the Cardinals. I think a big game for Marquise Brown means a big game for Kyler Murray for the Cardinals. They're actually hanging. This is a fun game. So if you want to kind of pivot off, if Dortch ends up looking like it's going to be really chalky, you could play the game as it actually has some points. And, I mean, I don't know how you're going to get to Adams on this slate, but, a Kyler Marquise Brown Adams is certainly fun. I don't know. I don't know what you have salary left for after that, but.
Yeah, I think at that one, you're punting on tight end. You're probably trying to find a unique punt at wide receiver, probably playing like Darrell Henderson. We can definitely throw some, you can still throw out your season-long questions. I know it's DFS, but, the two do happen to intertwine a lot. So what was your take on both just the Cardinals offense as a whole in week 1? Obviously you say it's the Dortch stuff is a symptom of broken offense, but more as it relates to Marquise Brown, because it sounds like you're totally willing to dip your toes back in. And this is in relation to the question of if you're desperate at running back, if you're truly desperate, are you buying Kareem Hunt at the cost of your Marquise Brown?
I don't know. I was told this is a DFS show, so I'm not going to be trying to work out trades here, guys. I think with the Marquise Brown stuff, I wouldn't say I'm totally willing to go back to it. I don't like the look of the Cardinals. They went really slow. They had the 32nd ranked situation neutral pace last week, which is like I called it the parody raid. Like it's supposed to be a fast paced pass first offense, and they
also
went
get
super
your best players the ball too.
Yeah,
and like Greg Dortch, I'm sure he's a great guy. He's not their best player. I refuse to believe that.
Yeah, I just everything we were promised slowly being stripped away here. Everything, and now it's the pace is gone. They're not prioritizing the pass. I don't think. I mean, and I make fun of Cliff all the time, and some of that's fair, and maybe some of it's not fair. But here, I guess what I would say in his defense is that I mean, they don't have Hopkins. Brown hasn't had this instant connection that they were hoping for. Rondale Moore is out. Like, I kind of get it to an extent. You're trying to hide this offense you don't have that much confidence in. But it doesn't make me feel great about the Cardinals. It's more of like, I think in a big field tournament, you could do kind of like Marquise Brown with Kyler. I think in small field stuff, it honestly feels like too contrarian or galaxy brain to me at this point. Maybe I'm like overreacting too much to week one, but I don't love the feel of this Cardinals team.
All right, I'm in on getting Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt actually like almost clearly locked down a red zone role as well. I believe he doubled up Nick Chubb in red zone carries and also saw like one red zone catch, which the team didn't throw much at all, especially in the red zone. So that was tied for a team high. So if you are truly a disgusting level of desperate, maybe you are actually looking to Kareem Hunt. Sticking on quarterback, because I feel like this is like when Derek Carr and Matt Stafford are going to be popular at quarterback, like that's the time you get contrarian. And I do think you pointed out like Trey Lance could be a player people are turning to as far as like, I want to play Kupp, I want to play Devontae. You know, Saquon Barkley got priced up a bit and not enough. Like 7,300 is just too cheap for. I think seeing what we saw from Eckler last night, where it's very clear that for whatever reason, they're not like willing to give him that just crazy goal line red zone type of role. Like they're throwing to Xander Horvath, they're getting Sony Michel in for first and one on the goal line type of stuff. Like I'm actually, I don't think it'd be fair to be like, well, now that I've got this little sneak preview, I'm going to bump down him in the rankings. Next week, he will be ranked season long and like rest of season and just my week 3 rankings. He'll be below Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is going to be no lower than 3 unless something goes catastrophically wrong this week.
Yeah, I mean, Saquon Barkley, you love everything that you saw out of week 1.
Yep. So if you're wanting to get up to these types of players, someone like Marcus Mariota, who this person mentions as Mariota versus Fields, to me, I'd go Fields here. But I do want to just touch on Mariota, who at a pretty cheap price on DraftKings, I assume he can't be expensive on FanDuel either. 5,600 right next to Trey Lance. I'm maybe willing to dip my toes into this range as far as like just a Mariota or a Trey Lance skinny stack. And then at that point, I don't think those players will be crazy expensive or crazy popular because Carr and Stafford are also not in the Murray Jackson level of price. I think the quote punt options are more like mid-range options. Carr, Stafford, maybe people get on Wentz. It is a good looking game. It is one of the highest totals of the slate. Maybe even it's like the second highest, I believe. So any love for Mariota, who we saw gives us the rushing work. He's not terrible as a passer, and that game has a high total. He's an underdog, but his team does not have a high total.
I don't love it because of it's a quarterback on a team that you don't think is going to score a ton of points. Now, I'm kind of intrigued by Drake London. I noted in the walkthrough that Kyle Pitts was blocking a lot more. He only had 15 pass blocking snaps all of last season. He had 7 last week.
Rest in power, King.
Yeah, like they're turning him into a tight end. He was supposed to be a wide receiver. Don't make him a tight end.
I was promised a wide receiver.
It's not a huge deal for Pitts. Pitts is still awesome, but I do think it's like a slight marginal benefit for Drake London, who also had a really nice debut. There's going to be passing plays where Pitts stays in. And so, it's one less, frankly, the only real target competition that he has. So, that would be semi-intriguing, but I don't know. To me, I'm like, okay, so if the field is going to try to save money at quarterback, I'm more intrigued by like Lamar. I really like that game. So I think Lamar paying up, now you got to go find, because then the easiest pairing with him is Andrews. But I kind of like going Lamar Andrews, and then like you put yourself in a real bind there that I don't think a lot of people are going to want to do. And so you're going to end up having a pretty different construction from the field.
So, you want to elaborate on liking the game versus Miami. That's Baltimore, Miami. Like Miami, I think this may be a bit of a mirage, but the defense obviously statistically looked very good against the Patriots, but the Patriots might just be like completely bungling their offense. They're like switching schemes, they're switching play callers. It is like coaching overturn that really hasn't happened to them recently. And the talent's not like that great, right? Like it's not like they have any sort of elite receiver. Their tight ends are good, but not great. their offensive line, again, a good team, but they have no one who I think can like dominate a game and beat a strong Miami defense. Whereas the Ravens clearly do. They have multiple players that can do that. So is this like, I guess like what's your take on this game? You seem to be interested in.
Yeah, my take is that Miami was more pass heavy than we thought they'd be.
Yeah.
Last week they had a pretty strong pass rate over expected. Now they weren't some like crazy aired out team, but this was a team that we thought would be, at least I thought would kind of be like the 49ers. Yeah. So to have them even be balanced would have been sort of a victory for passing volume. To have them have the chance to be pass first, potentially a massive swing in, where they're going to be this season from what our preseason perceptions were. So right off the bat, I'm intrigued by Miami. Is like maybe a spot where we can be a little bit early on this team compared to the field. Now, I do recognize that this could have all just been Patriots related. But even if the Patriots defense is a pass funnel, which is definitely possible, the Ravens were a major, major pass funnel to close last season. They have injuries at cornerback, and they were passed on last week. Now they were passed on by the Jets, who are mostly kind of in, comeback mode. But the Jets, I think, throughout the game really weren't quite as run heavy as we thought they might be. So there's the potential. There's sort of two outs here for Miami to be more pass heavy than we thought entering week one. One is their own philosophy. One is that this Ravens defense might be a pass funnel again. And, the way to attack them is going to be through the air with their injuries. If both of those things are true, now all of a sudden we've got Miami passing a lot, and we know they've got really good weapons. It's fun to play Tyreek. Waddle's he had less than half the targets of Tyreek, but we know he can break big plays. We saw him do it last week and save his day. So there's a couple different guys that you can consider as bringbacks there. Andrews is running routes like an elite wide receiver. I think Isaiah Likely being out there, people are thinking, oh, this might hurt him. It helps him.
No.
It helps him.
The less wide receivers you can put on the field for the wide receivers that remain on the field is so much better. And I think Isaiah Likely is good, right? But if you're putting a fullback or a secondary tight end on the field, that is one less of like the NFL's true pass catching position that you're competing with for targets. So for Bateman, even for Duvernay when he's out there, because he's probably just out there still on 2 wide sets, for obviously Mark Andrews, like I want Patrick Ricard on the field. I want the backup tight ends on the field. Like, and this is bared out by the data too. Like this is something we showed, like the yards per route run for players getting to play on 2 wide sets is much better than their 3 wide sets because they're competing with like Isaiah Likely's and Will Disley's and Noah Fants of the world for their targets.
Yeah. Hayden Winks has written about this, that, there is an actual statistical bias in yards per route run, that if you're in 2 wide receiver sets, you're going to have higher yards per route run. He also talks about not just the target competition, but the fact that defenses are probably respecting the run a little bit more in power sets. And so that as well, like, okay, that's helpful for wide receivers. If the defense isn't sure if you're going to pass, that's probably even more helpful for the tight end, right? Like who's actually going against potentially a safety or linebacker who might be screwing up that play. So, I just think and also like if a extra tight end generally helps wide receivers, a day 3 tight end who's having passes bounce off his hands is probably even better. So to me, it's like, yes, there was some concern entering the season that Likely might eat directly into Andrews' role, but that's not what we saw at all.
He's eating into like 90%. James Prochet's role or Tyler Wallace's role, whoever would have been their third receiver.
Exactly. So Andrews was a cover boy of the walkthrough this week. I really like him. I think it could be an up-tempo game environment, and a not like super, super pass-heavy game environment, but concentrated offenses and kind of plus volume for both teams. Seems like a fun game.
Yeah, I think you definitely talked me in this game, especially because I think Tyreek Hill, not really expensive, 7,100 as far as like the big name brand receivers go, will be popular, and I think he will be popular. Andrews will be popular. Lamar definitely won't reach like a tier 1 level of ownership, but the secondary pieces in this game, I think it's going to be pretty concentrated to them. Like the Ravens have 2 receivers and a tight end that they're throwing to. Yeah. The Dolphins have 2 receivers that they're throwing to. Like that is it. I don't care about anyone else on that team. Any love for Waddle, who I think he was getting like nearly blanked early in that game and then started breaking out in the second half, including I believe a long catch as well, 42-yarder, I believe. So just near the end of the first half. So like how how close do you think the split will end up being between Waddle and Hill? Because if it is close, I don't think Waddle will be particularly popular, and I think Hill will be. If the split is even like in the same zip code, like that is the ideal leverage play, is to get into a great game, but to attack it in a different way.
Yeah, I like that idea. I was experimenting with Waddle instead of Hill. They're close enough in salary that, it's like, man, I feel like I can move a couple things around and get to Hill. One thing that just occurred to me now is like, what about Tua? Do you think there's any appeal to Tua doubles and then an Andrews bring back? It just that feels very natural.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Tua gets even like 5% in a game that, like, we're talking about it does seem like it'd be pretty good. And if Baltimore, if they end up being this type of pass funnel, like you said, against the team that led in week 1 in pass rate over expectation, like, this is a very strong case for Tua throwing to 2 players who finished, I believe, at or above like 3 yards per route run, which is a very strong metric. If he's just throwing all of his targets to all of the best players, like, it's a very strong bet to be placing on him. So I think I'd probably he's just going to project for far less than, Wilson, Stafford, Carr. So this is something that is almost certainly large field only. But if it's a game we like and you can attack it in like a hyper contrarian way, that double will be very contrarian.
I don't know that it's large field only, because you just there's not that many really strong quarterback plays on the slate. So if you double stack it with a bring back and the game goes off, he's pretty cheap, so I think you could probably play it in small field.
Let's move. I think there's one more. I guess I'll throw out 2. Trey Lance, I think he'll get some ownership because, it is a slate that I said that really good receivers still on this slate, even if the best teams aren't on this slate, and some good running backs as well. So cheap quarterback probably makes sense in this roster construction, and cheap quarterback makes sense when there's no Herbert, no Mahomes, no Allen, even more so than the rest of the dynamics. Trey Lance, 5,700. Not a great start. Completed less than half of his passes, intercepted once, took 2 sacks. But the one silver lining is maybe a bit generous to call it. This game that they played in week 1 was played inside of a monsoon, hosted an Olympic swimming pool. It was truly a horrible looking game in the sense of not quite to the level of, the Patriots-Bills game where the Patriots complete 3 passes, but in a sense of when you look at the stats, you have to kind of understand that the margin of error when using the stats, like the pass rate over expected, to forecast forward, it's going to be less predictive. I would bet anything that their pass rate over expected is less predictive than even the Dolphins, who had a crazy pass rate over expected. But they played in a relatively normal game. They just beat their opponent nice and easy. This was not a normal game. So any love for Trey Lance, who at this point I'm just hoping takes some deep shots and rushes the ball a lot, because at 5,700 on DK, that's all you really are dying for just based on price.
Well, shout out to John Warner, who alerted me to this. Do you know what the weather calls for this weekend?
No.
In San Francisco, according to the weather report here, there's going to be widespread rain.
Well, so let's nix Trey Lance. Do you have a read on this backfield? I saw a Jeff Wilson question in the chat.
Why? Trey Lance just brings the rain, man. It's no matter where he is. He's in Chicago, he's in San Francisco. I don't know.
Play the next 16 games in Seattle, strangely.
I'm open to Trey Lance, but it isn't that fun because it's if Debo's going to be more in the hybrid role, is he that as a stacking partner, does he make that much sense? Mm-hmm. And then also, I don't know. I just don't feel great about spending a ton of salary on Debo. So I was thinking Ayuk maybe, but yeah, I don't know. I'd like a Trey Lance to Ayuk single. You don't really want to do a bring back there. You could do a game stack of another game and then sub out Lance for that quarterback. But what game is that? I don't want to do that. I don't want to sub out Lamar. I don't want to do a Lamar single stack and then sub him out for Lance. I just feel now I'm trying to get too many things right. So I'm not sure what the game is that I would even do if I'm doing you game stack one game and then you use a cheap rushing quarterback.
Yeah. Last thing on the 49ers. Well, 2 things. Well, they relate pretty strongly. The backfield. Any read on the backfield? It was interesting. We saw Debo. I was modestly encouraged that he had a target share of something like 28%, I believe, while also seeing 8 carries. What if it's not the hybrid role playing some receiver and some running back? He just doesn't vote. He just straight up is the number one receiver on any play they pass on and the number one running back. Because that was the problem last year, is that, like, I think you lose a lot of upside when he's getting 4 targets, 6 carries, right? But if he's getting 8 targets, 6 carries, like, that is a different deal. And he did dominate the targets in this game. I don't know what our status is on George Kittle, and I don't know even if he does play in this game, like at what capacity he'll be playing. So I think that's the upside case for Debo, is that we saw, even as they do the quote like hybrid role last week, he still dominated targets. Now the targets in this offense are less valuable than they used to be. So do you have a read on the backfield, and then we can move on to like actual running backs?
I mean, sorry, which backfield?
San Francisco.
No, my read would be Tyrion Davis-Price, who was inactive, I think is a better bet than Jordan Mason for the second running back spot, because Mason didn't get any snaps in last week's game. So, why wouldn't he have gotten a snap if they plan to play him this week? But I'm kind of thinking that Debo is probably the number 2 guy behind Wilson. So I don't know. To me, that's part of the reason I don't love this game in general, is that I think Debo, it's probably just Debo. Like, you play Debo and get like everything there is to get. I'm playing Jeff Wilson in, some season long stuff, but I don't think he's really on the DFS radar.
All right, let's move on to running backs here. So we had some running back questions in the chat, and it is like I don't know, it seems like not the most interesting slate for running backs, because like to me it is almost difficult to get away from like Saquon Barkley with a reasonable team total after what we saw last week. Absolutely elite. To me, the more interesting question is, I still think people are going back to McCaffrey. He's Christian McCaffrey. But is he? That's the question. I want to believe he is still Christian McCaffrey, but he saw, 10 carries, 4 targets, if I can remember off the top of my head. Didn't do a ton. He scored a touchdown to, quote, save the day, but like that wasn't enough in DFS last week. And it's not like his price was correct at all. It may have actually even gone up on DraftKings, because I think their algorithm uses like previous week ownership to get you next week price. So to me, McCaffrey, is he McCaffrey, is like such a linchpin of this slate. Do you have a read on if he is still like the guy?
Well, I heard entering week 1 that basically you're a total moron if you didn't take him number 1. So what, he doesn't have one game of being a game breaker, and we're like, oh no, is he real? Like, we got to go back. What do we got to go back? We're taking this guy over JT.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, I speak in jest and set you up for kind of a T-ball one, because he ran nearly all of the routes. He played 80% of the snaps, and he didn't give up a target to any of his backups. And he also out-carried them pretty strongly, too. It was like 10-5 or 10-3 or something like that. It was 10-3. So in a game, I think they were losing most of that game as well, and they ultimately did lose. Either way, it was a close game. My only concern is that he just didn't convert those routes to like the usual McCaffrey level of targets. But it's not like Baker is known for never throwing to running backs. I believe last year the Browns were like 19th in total running back targets. The year before that, they were like elite in running back targets. And then the year before that, they were poor. Like, taking the sum of his career, he throws to running backs maybe a little below average. But this is something in the old McCaffrey days where, Cam Newton is different. He's not going to throw to running backs. McCaffrey has a gravity to him, a talent level gravity to him that it just doesn't matter. Like, he throws to running backs because he's got Christian McCaffrey. And that's how I feel about this. If Baker had been like 32nd, 30th, 31st in his seasons throwing to running backs, maybe this is where I draw some concern. But he looks like an average 30-year running backs type of guy, and those guys throw to McCaffrey. So I'm not particularly concerned with McCaffrey, at least, not concerned enough not to play him. So that'd be where I go there. Running back who did catch a lot of passes, Javonte Williams. And this is a game that I find it to be the most interesting game, because we had Javonte and Melvin Gordon getting goal line carries. Had they converted instead of fumbling, I think we have an entirely different outlook on the Broncos. They were 3rd in EPA per play. They were like top 5 or top 10 in yards per play. And the only thing holding them back the major thing holding them back from a really good day was the fumbles. They did some other dumb stuff too. Obviously, the 4th down decision, running the clock out and kicking 64-yarder. I'd say that's not smart. I even think Hackett said at the end of the day, he's like, going back, I think I would change this decision. But also, letting the clock expire and getting penalized multiple times for that was shocking and maybe something that's more endemic to the team. But overall, if you're going to be an elite team in EPA and yards per play, finish like third or fourth overall in yards accumulated in week one, they're like a pretty strong buy low team for me. They're massive favorites against the Texans. But the good news is they were slightly above average in pass rate over expectation last week. So I think they should just absolutely go out and drop 40 on Houston. And you can get all their players for a relatively fair level of ownership and price. Am I alone on this island? But I kind of know I'm not.
No, this is where I went as well. I mean, Javonte Williams, I'm pretty into. I don't think he's going to be like massive chalk. He'll definitely be pretty highly rostered, but nothing. It doesn't seem like there's enough other guys, right?
Yeah, like I think Barkley, McCaffrey, Henderson, like that trio is going to be in so many lineups. Javonte will certainly get in the mix. Yeah, I think those three guys are like a very specific tier of like could push for 20% ownership, and then Fournette, maybe DeAndre Swift, definitely Joe Mixon coming off of a really strong game as a massive favorite. Those type of guys are more pushing like they'll be north of 10 for sure, but they're not going to reach Barkley levels.
Right. So yeah, with it being a little bit split up and there frankly just being a lot of really good plays at running back this week, it makes me feel like, we can go to Javonte without, eating a ton of chalk there. Now, maybe it's one of those things where one of the guys will get cut out, right? And it's like no one plays Henderson and everyone plays Javonte or Saquon or something, or Javonte and Saquon. And, so there's some risk of that. But I think going Javonte makes sense. I kind of like Judy. I think you can play Javonte with Russ because of the targets. And they're talking about, this is kind of what we think he is. Like, we like him in this role, which is the reverse of what we thought coming in. We thought maybe Melvin Gordon would be the passing down guy. Javonte's the passing down guy, and he's obviously the better running back. I mean, he's got a ton of upside, but he's also going to correlate positively with Russ. I think, I was experimenting with like no Russ, but Javonte and a pass catcher. That's kind of interesting to me, like kind of a script where the Broncos roll Houston and, multiple pieces are getting there. This is something that worked last year with Dallas when they beat the Falcons very badly. I think it was CD and Zeke got there together in a really big way. I actually think they got there with the Dallas defense too. But yeah, kind of like an unconventional stack. I was kind of thinking through that. But I do like the Broncos, and the obvious bring back would be Cooks, although it seems like he's going to be a little bit chalky, so I don't love that.
Yeah, I realize I've been having this question hang around on the screen for a while. After talking about it, I feel good about having Bateman here. I had it because it was, as a suggestion to talk about Bateman because I am, cautiously feeling good about this Bateman situation, especially in this game. So, I think running back isn't like the most interesting, especially to me. It's just like, I would like to dip multiple times into the tier 2 level of ownership. Your Javantes, even Cordell Patterson, really strong role in week one. Antonio Gibson kind of fits that same bill. So
what was the question? So he wants to sit Bateman, Chase Edmonds.
Oh, sit
Penny,
one. I read start one. I am sitting Curtis Samuel. I just don't buy him in that role.
It's Samuel or Penny because Walker's back, so they're going to split the early down stuff. But I probably lean Samuel. Yeah. Yeah,
that's true. I see some Akers stuff, but I trust Akers. No, there's a reason Darrell Henderson at 5,700 is going to be a top 2 or 3 owned back. I guess we can sort of work our way into receivers because I think this is super interesting. Given that the Bengals defense is going to be absolute chalk, I get why. Cooper Rush is probably the 32nd best starting quarterback we'll see on this, from Thursday to Monday. But CD still dominated targets for this team, and I have him in one of my main event teams. Can I start CD, Pat?
Yeah, you can start CD. I do think it's going to be frustrating for sure. CD Lamb's game logs going forward, but one thing that was a little interesting about Cooper Rush is that he was throwing downfield, and so maybe we can get there on a couple big plays. And Lamb, he did actually have decent volume. Like if you look at his air yards and targets per route, pretty solid. His actual yards per route run, atrocious. That was true across the board for the Cowboys, as you would expect, given not just Rush, but Dak playing horribly before he left. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's like only CD for me. Like, I guess I'd play Dalton Schultz if I like don't have anything else in that particular league. But
If you had drafted Dalton Schultz, you'd play him, but you didn't draft Dalton Schultz.
right. Yeah, I mean, like, but for DFS, like CD feels more like I don't play the Millie Maker, but it's like that kind of vibe. Like you need some like really weird stuff to happen for CD to be the guy, right?
I mean, the last time we saw Cooper Rush play, threw for 320 some odd yards, 2 tutties against the Vikings, I believe. I think that's the hope, though, is that like he plays, Jameis Winston style of football. As you said, he has the high, he was willing to take deep shots. They threw a lot the last time he started in a close game. You're hoping that his injection into the offense gives you variance, right? Not gives you an average that is high, but it just gives you variance that can sort of push CD over the edge. It's a long shot, especially as price. Obviously, like you want to take long shots on guys who are cheap and unowned. If they're really like quote bad plays. But just to me, the leverage against the Bengals defense slappies, I can't get away from it.
Okay, I'm with that. But actually, I mean, Bengals can have a pick six, and then Cowboys are throwing all game. So I don't even know if it's that much leverage.
I had totally on accident, just trying to get some final lineups in. I had a Joe Burrow Pittsburgh defense classic stack, and boy, did it work out. I was like,
did you really have that?
Yeah, I was just wow. Rushing, honestly, adjusting some stuff in the optimizer and like manually making some edits, and I clearly just wasn't paying close enough attention. It's a very good lineup. In fact, it was a very good lineup. I've seen 2 Saquon Barkley trade questions. I believe I've seen 2. I would take the Barkley side for all of them. Like Kamara's usage was very questionable in week 1. Not even the rushing. He was used as a pass blocker way more than he's ever been used before. So to me, if you can get the third, I think at least the third best fantasy back, I'm willing to sort of give up the Mike Williams short-term edge.
Yeah, for questions, if you guys have any kind of DFS related questions, fire those in. We'll try to work those into the discussion. At the end, maybe we can get to some of the redraft and trade stuff. I did want to ask you about for running backs, this sort of contrarian thought, but I was like thinking, Ramondre Stevenson, is he a potential pivot here, or am I just too in the tank for this guy?
You said this on the show. When did we record? Thursday. That maybe the fact that they used Ty Montgomery and Damian Harris over Ramondre could have told us something. I think it's too deep. Totally possible he goes out well, but it's a very low scoring game. They're only slight favorites. I don't think 1 week and I'm out on Ramondre, which is a painful place to be at this early in the season. But I don't think I'd do it, honestly. I think there are better running backs in more secure roles at a not dissimilar price, unfortunately. Very sad.
All right, that's a bummer.
Just down bad.
Yeah.
I got a question here, Julio Cooks, and I want to use it as a method to get to Julio because, I do want to try and keep this DFS focused. I'll give my take. You don't have to give yours. I'll take Julio and I don't know who. Oh, I'll take Julio and Wilson, sure. But the Bucs team is one that last year was a nonstop passing onslaught. And then in week 1, we see them admittedly against a Cowboys team that was toothless. They had no, Dak looked horrible and then gets hurt. And then Cooper Rush looks like Cooper Rush, which is last week he was the worst quarterback in EPA per dropback. So not great. Not great. I think maybe that is the reason we see them have a pretty poor pass rate. Julio looked good when he was on the field. He topped 3 yards per route run. They were getting him the ball pretty much in nonstop. He was, I believe, second on the team in targets. They gave him 2 carries. This dude hasn't had 2 carries since he was a rookie. That was in 2011. He's been in the league for a decade. They clearly want to get him involved. And now Chris Godwin not playing this week. Russell Gage and Mike Evans both banged up as well. I think this is a strong contrarian spot for really any of the receivers, but like it was not less than 2 years ago that we were saying if Julio Jones can just finish a game, he is a top 5 candidate every single week. And he was, I think 2 years ago, he was 7th in receiving yards per game. We only play 8 or 10 games. He's Julio. That's kind of what he does. But I like the Bucs as a contrarian spot as far as stacking goes. And specifically, I love Julio. I just think that if there's any shred of Julio's talent left, which as of 2 years ago, there definitely was, and he was solid in his very few Titans appearances. If there's any shred of the Julio level talent left, I want to be playing that guy when he plays with Tom Brady. So do you have any sort of takes on this Bucs game, even because it's not the most interesting game. It's them versus New Orleans, who Brady has famously struggled against since joining the Bucs. But I want to play Bucs, especially when they're not popular. That's all I have.
Yeah, I would. I'm definitely struggling to be excited about playing the Bucs, but looking at the possibility of this game not really having many people on it at all definitely has me more interested. My read on it is that with the offensive line issues that they have, and with the fill-ins playing much better in run blocking than pass blocking last week, and with the struggles that Brady has had against New Orleans, like you said, and with the fact that Cordell Patterson just ran all over the Saints, that the Buccaneers might be eyeing this up as a potential matchup where they can just, run the ball and get out of there without getting Brady hit a bunch of times. So it doesn't have a ton of appeal on its face. Now, if you look at it as just a contrary, could this work out? Yeah, I think it could. And I guess it just comes down to health. We've got, missing practice this week from Julio, from Gage, from Evans. Perriman was dealing with a minor knee injury. So I guess I'm a little nervous with Julio. You talk about him ever finishing a game. He's coming into this game not completely healthy. And even if he was completely healthy, he wouldn't be running full slate of routes. And they might go run heavy. And I'm not sure the Saints are really going to want to push them out of going run heavy if that's the way the Bucs are playing it. So, yeah, I get it as a contrarian play. I don't know that I'm going to get there.
Yeah, I might in some large field stuff. Any other games that you are looking at, especially from the wide receiver perspective? Because another spot, I do think when there's sort of uncertainty in the slate, when it's Devontae Adams is, an alpha stud, and so is Cooper Kupp. And then after that, there's a lot of uncertainty. I think those are the spots where I really want to be sort of digging deep into these sub 10, even sub 5% plays. And that's really what has me on someone like a Julio. I love the Drake London optimism that you had, especially in a game where they have no choice but to throw. They're 10-point dogs. And we saw that even though it was the Bills, their defense maybe isn't, and defense is just so unpredictable, right? It's so non-sticky year to year that might not be as good as it was last year. So to me, those are some, strong spots. Any other or any other receivers that sort of pop up to you as maybe guys who, have breakout potential? I saw someone ask a Jahan Dotson question in the chat. And that's an interesting game, right? It's one of the highest totals, and it had receivers who all got there in varying ways last week. Jahan Dotson, double touchdown, I believe. Curtis Samuel gets there both as, some rushing work, and I believe the leading target getter. Terry McLaurin, I believe he scored as well, but it was not the target share we were used to. Any breakdown on one interest in that game? Because I've always thought that with a quote good quarterback, Washington offense coordinator Scott Turner, he seems to play. He seems to coach the game quite well, as far as a guy who's had Alex Smith and who else? Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke. These true backup caliber guys. He uses play action a lot. He uses motion a lot. He has pretty strong pass rate over expectation stuff. So any love for more so the receivers? I don't think I'm getting into the Carson Wentz level of grimy, but the receivers look like they're all at least reasonable bets this week.
I like McLaurin the most of the guys. I don't think anyone's going to be on him. He was targeted really deep downfield. And, that's going to lead to some boom bust type of games. Jahan Dotson is kind of on people's minds because of the 2 touchdowns. Curtis Samuel on people's minds because of the 10 targets. But McLaurin is the best wide receiver here. And if no one's going to be on him, I'm very interested in that. And then I think, you can look at potentially Amon-Ra St. Brown on the way back. We know for a fact that Goff is going to be dialed into St. Brown. I don't like Hawkinson. He had basically the same ADOT as St. Brown. If you're getting targeted at the same depth as the team's number one wide receiver, you're like directly competing with that guy for targets in a sense, especially because St. Brown plays mostly out of the slot. So it's like over the middle of the field, short targets. Who's going to win, Hawkinson or Amon-Ra? So to me, I think, Amon-Ra is going to crush there. So I'm not really interested in kind of Hawkinson at all. But yeah, I think that's kind of a fun mini. Now, it's kind of expensive. That's the only issue that I have with it. Like Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Terry doesn't leave you. Like, I think this week kind of calls for finding something. Like if you could find a mini correlation, a wide receiver correlation in the same game that you loved, at like 5,500, an average of 5,500 or something on DraftKings, it would just unlock things. I don't think that exists. Like I said, I was looking at Cooper and Elijah Moore, but I don't like that game environment. So I don't know of one that's perfect, but that one I think is at least intriguing because both guys aren't going to be very chalky. And McLaurin seems like he won't really be on the radar at all. So, and I think that's a good game environment. I think that game could shoot out for sure. So yeah, I'd throw that one out there.
This is a cheeky comment. What are the odds that Terry is not the best receiver on the team? I would say the odds it's Curtis Samuel are just so incredibly low because he's had so many chances in the NFL, and multiple coaching staffs have said, like, it's fine. He's, a gadget plus or a deep threat.
What I would say to this is, like, think about it like a bet, right? Because the market for DFS is going to be off Terry. So you're getting plus money now on Terry being like, you're not laying money that McLaurin is the best wide receiver. You're basically getting McLaurin as the best wide receiver on the Commanders at an underdog type of price. Like that's the way you have to think about it with, if no one's playing McLaurin and people are interested in playing Curtis Samuel, which they seem like they are, and they are interested in playing Dotson, which they seem like they are. Now, it costs more salary to get to McLaurin. So you got to figure out, you're not costing yourself too much elsewhere by getting to him. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible, but the market thinks like that's the case. That's the way they're playing it this week, that he's no longer the guy you need to make sure you're prioritizing. So if you just play it the other way, you're basically, getting plus money to do that.
All right, jump to tight end. Then we'll throw some listener questions in the chat to close out for the final few minutes. We talked about, a decent amount of tight ends, Andrews, Pitts, Hawkinson already. So I'll just give you two questions. Am I allowed to celebrate Albert Akuigbunam getting 6 targets, 5 catches, 33 yards, especially when they came out, he wasn't on the field. They threw to fullback tight end hybrid type Andrew Beck. I think Eric Saubert got a target or two, but eventually he, 6 targets, I think would have been a strong enough showing had he not been starting the game. Can I celebrate this? I want to, but I don't even know if that's legal.
I don't think I'd be celebrating it. I think you can feel better than you did, when you were holding a funeral for the guy with Davis Maddock. But I don't know that I'd be truly celebrating it. He had a 2.2 ADOT, 2.2 average depth of target. I mean,
it's Rondale Moore stuff.
Yeah. So you're not going to get a ton of upside if you're getting targeted that shallowly. And we also saw targets to Andrew Beck, who I guess is he not technically a tight end? It feels like he's a tight end, but I think he's listed as a fullback. And then Tomlinson and Saubert also saw work. Now that could mean they really want to involve the tight end, and it's great news for Alberto, but it could also mean this is going to be a split tight end, which they have signaled repeatedly that it will be. So, I mean, I think Alberto, I think it was overall a positive day from Alberto, but
that's celebration then.
Yeah. So I would, but I would keep it reined in. So it might
a modest, a humble celebration. Someone else who saw 6 targets, and you're probably not Alberto. You can celebrate 6 targets a little bit. You cannot. Darren Waller. He went for 79 yards, which is somehow the second most yards for a tight end in week 1, because I guess tight end was a pretty weak position. But that's a game that's exciting, right? I don't think he'll be incredibly popular despite it being an exciting game. But how much gravity does Devontae Adams have? Because he had both the most air yards and targets in week 1. Derek Carr just could not stop throwing to him. Has Darren Waller been a product of playing alongside some pretty mediocre receiving rooms? And is he even viable in DFS, right? In season 1, you're still playing. You have no other choices, but we get choices in DFS. So Where are we at on Derek or on Darren Waller?
Well, I mean, despite Davante Adams having a 54% air yard share and 45% of targets, which is just ridiculous, Darren Waller did have 2.26 yards per route run. He didn't get the target volume and the air yard volume we'd prefer, but he gets targeted downfield, 13 ADOT. I think that's one of the things to keep in mind with tight end that maybe goes a little under the radar. We talk a lot about targets and target share and stuff, but there are only a few tight ends really in the league who can challenge downfield consistently. And Waller is one of those guys. Andrews is one of those guys. Kelsey is one of those guys. Like, it's not a coincidence that the guys who are awesome for fantasy are also, because they're basically the only guys who can block like linemen and run downfield routes like wide receivers. So yeah, I think you got to stick with Waller. He was efficient, and ultimately Adams is not going to be able to maintain this level of target share. He'll be probably above 30%, but there's a lot of room to go from, let's say 31 to 45. That should open up targets for Waller, and Waller will benefit to some extent from Adams drawing defensive coverage. And when he does benefit, he's going to benefit in big plays because he actually gets targeted downfield. You look at a guy like Hunter Renfrow, and it's like, maybe we have the wrong guy with tight end eligibility here, because Renfro's only going to get there on shallow volume. And Waller, he can have some big plays, and Waller will be frustrating, I think, but there will be games, I think, this year where Waller goes off. So I think you never want to think he's, doesn't have a ceiling because of Adams.
I like it. All right, let's rip a few, listener questions. Got Gabe Davis, Sutton, or Hunt. To me, it's Gabe Davis. We just want to attach ourselves to Bills. Maybe probably a lesser target share, right, than Sutton, but yeah. And Hunt was never considered for me. You?
Yeah, I think I'm Gabe.
It's close though. I think they're both close. Curtis Samuel over Christian Kirk. Now, Christian Kirk's role is immense. He's played like 1.5 games with Trevor Lawrence, including their preseason game, right? And he has 20 targets already. Like, it's just clear that like they're using him as if he is one of the 5 best receivers in the NFL, per the paycheck he's getting. What else we got here? Jalen Waddle or Jeff Wilson? Still Jalen Waddle. There's just way too much uncertainty in that backfield. Like, if we didn't have like Debo potentially being an RB2, maybe, but I don't know. Probably clearly Waddle for me. What else do we got?
Elijah Drake London's interesting. I think that's a conversation, but I'd go Elijah.
Yeah, I'm in for that as well. They played with the fastest pace and the highest pass rate last week. And they weren't getting, bludgeoned, right? It wasn't a particularly close game, but through the first half, it was like a 2-possession game, right? So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And they still were like, yeah, I know how this is going to go. We gotta go out there and pass a lot and still lose anyways. So what else we got? Sit 2 here. Sit 2, Chark, Gage, Deontay Johnson. I'm sitting Gage and Greg Dortch. That's not much of a conversation to me.
Yeah, Gage and Greg Dortch.
Yeah.
There was one up here, Higbee or Logan Thomas. Higbee, baby. Give me 11 targets.
Yeah, I'll go Higbee. They play somewhat similar roles now, especially with the Commanders having like 3 legit receivers. I don't think that like number 2 receiver role that Logan Thomas was playing is on the table anymore. He's more of a weekly 3rd or 4th option on his team, which is now just it's what Tyler Higbee's always been. So now we just get to equalize them and say whose offense is better. So that's clearly the team that has the reins. So sit 2 here: Edmund, Singletary, Damian Harris, Stevenson, or Burkhead. 2x points for 50. We're not getting one.
I mean, hey, come on, man. What are we doing here?
Any of these guys got 50 yard TD receptions. Edmund's role is very strong, not perfect but strong, and Singletary. To me, I'm not dipping my toes into the Patriots backfield yet.
Oh, you go Stevenson. Have some courage. Edmonds and Stevenson.
All right. Start Chark over Deontay Johnson. No, Deontay Johnson's out. I can't believe he was going I thought he should have been in
This is not Deontay Johnson, guys. Don't overthink this stuff. Deontay Johnson is a smash.
He's always been an alpha too. Like his draft, his ADP was something that it felt gross because I don't want to play Steelers. But dude gets targets. It turns out these guys who get targets.
He was awesome. Deontay Johnson was awesome last week. Check out his sideline grab, and he was earning targets. He was earning targets like he was with Ben. Like, the Steelers led the Bengals throughout the entire game, which is like crazy, right? Because Burrow turned the ball over 5 times. So weird stuff had to happen. The Bengals were a much, much better team than the Steelers. They're not going to be in that position a lot. And they showed that they were willing to let Trubisky throw a bit. So, yeah, Deontay Johnson's going to have some really, really nice games this year.
All right, 2 more. Lance or Wentz. For me, it's still Lance. Wentz looked fine. His first half was rough, but he picked it up in the second half. But, like, I'm still betting on Konami code guys over pocket guys.
I mean, yeah, we're doing Wentz.
Last one, Swift or AJ Dillon. Swift, dude. Swift is so good. He is so good. And the Jamal Williams vulture stuff, I've talked about it. Listen to the Thursday show. It's, semi-fraudulent to entirely fraudulent. So
let's fire a few more of these. We got Kirk or Lamb. No, you go Kirk, I think, at this point, right? Do you go Kirk?
No, I think you still go Lamb because I get Cooper Rush is bad, but like Trevor Lawrence didn't come out and light the world on fire, right? He's still not like the elite level. And I think Lamb is just an elite level talent, right? I saw someone here dropped it.
I might do it.
Someone dropped it here that I can't find it now, but Lamb's expected points were unsurprisingly elite. The expectation, you're going to run below expectation when you play with Cooper Rush, but sorry we didn't answer your question.
Are you a favorite? If you're a favorite in your matchup, go Kirk. If you're an underdog, go Lamb.
I'm fine with this line of logic. What else do we got? Waddle or Sanders? Still Waddle. Do you guys start Brady at QB? I'm still starting Brady. I think week 1 wasn't super optimistic, but I think practice reports look like they're getting everyone but Godwin for this game, so that's fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, it depends who else you have, I guess. But assuming it's like Brady versus Daniel Jones or whatever, you go Brady. That's crazy. We both went there. Stevenson or Elijah Moore? There, I would go Elijah Moore.
Yes.
London over Devonta? Yes, London over Devonta.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll end on this one. Brandon Cooks or Michael Thomas?
I think Cooks.
Me too. I was thinking Cooks as well.
Yeah.
All right. That'll do it.
Guys.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we'll try and allot a little more time for listener questions at the end. We'll run through the DFS and give you guys a strong 10 of us debating some really grimy spots. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys again. Same time next week. Have a good one.